friends. Sorry for the dearth of content. I think I just need to come to terms with the fact that sometimes I just get pretty bad writer's block. I'm currently sitting on a half-finished analysis of market socialism. I've attempted to write something on the Don't Say Gay bill. It's just, I've tried to do a lot of things and it just hasn't come out the greatest. Maybe I just need, like, regular time off, because I spent a lot of time trying to work. Maybe I need to spend more time streaming video games or something. Actually, if you watch this on release, I'll be streaming games right now. It's time for the Saturday morning show, so hey, make sure you drop by the gaming channel literally after this video, and come say hi. But this morning, when I was eating breakfast, I was watching this stupid video, taking responsibility for systemic racism, the problem with Jon Stewart. Oh boy. And I realized I kind of had to react to it, because, it got the old creative juices flowing again. I know there's at least a few creative types in my audience. You know how it is when you're stuck in a rut for a while and then you see something and you're like, oh my god. And it kind of kickstarts your brain again. That's what I feel like right now. So let's check this nonsense out.
An episode about race, focusing on black issues. You'd want to connect with a Cornel West, a Ta-Nehisi Coates, a Dave Matthews, experts in the field. But I'm going to take Toni Morrison's advice on this. It's time for white people to talk and figure some things out. So tonight I'm speaking to, I mean, honestly, as white a panelist I think I could find. I have an Andrew, a Lisa, and a Chip.
You know, I sometimes still don't mind Jon Stewart's humor. I have a feeling it's going to get a whole lot worse, but I mean, that made me chuckle a little bit.
At LaSalle University, he researches social inequality and race. Lisa Bond, the resident white woman for Race to Dinner, a group that is trying to have better conversations about race in America. And joining remotely, longtime author and columnist Andrew Sullivan, editor of the Weekly Dish. Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I want to talk about this. Here's what I think holds back our race conversation in America. I think at its core, I think white people put blame on black people for the position that they are in.
Hold on, John. Hold back the conversation on race in America. What conversation is being held back? We have these conversations all the time. Our entire culture is inundated with these conversations right now, John. It's online, it's in schools, it's on the news, it's in our entertainment media, movies, games, shows, whatever it is. At this point, the left, the progressives, they've won the culture war.
A significant amount of white people in the United States of America see race relations through a colorblind lens. And I don't mean that whites don't see race. They see someone that's black or Asian. But they don't in any way attach any meaning to the color in affecting life chances. And what that fundamentally means is that race doesn't matter in getting ahead. It just doesn't matter.
They believe that we are in a race-neutral environment.
The playing field has been leveled, and if you make it, or you don't.
It's a meritocracy.
It's a meritocracy, and it's a narrative also that does a lot of things. It makes white privilege invisible, and it also...
Hold on. So, first of all, that is in fact the attitude we should have, because that is in fact the world that we should be striving towards. Otherwise, you are legitimately a racist. And moreover, you're talking about white privilege. You know, the ideology of white privilege, academically, it's an ideology of the rich. You know what kind of people are learning about this stuff and thinking this way? The people who are bought into the white privilege narrative. These are university students. These are upper class people, sometimes middle class people. These are people who can afford to go to universities and be inculcated with this garbage. The working class, like broke white people, they are the least likely to believe in the concept of white privilege, because they are some of the people least likely to have privilege at all. Are you seriously going to sit here and yell and lecture at some, working class Republican guy who's never really left his hometown, who's making $25,000 a year at a menial job that just got shipped overseas, and the only help he's getting from anybody is an oxy prescription from his doctor? Are you going to tell him that he's benefiting from white privilege? This is a completely unrealistic way to look at the real lives of people.
When we talk about racism, we're talking about your character flaw. If we say you're racist, it's a character flaw. Mm-hmm. I'm bad, and I know I'm not bad. I think I'm a good person. I think I'm a nice person, and I know that I am racist, and I know that I'm racist.
Oh God. Okay. I want you to keep in mind for a little bit later that whole when I think of racism, we think of character flaws, because that's true. Like if you're a normie and you're using the term racist, like that guy's racist, you're describing a character flaw in that other person. It's meant to be used as a negative word. But at this point, here, I'll watch this a little bit more.
Because I, every single day, uphold the systems and the structures of racism.
Right. So that's not a character flaw anymore. Upholding the systems and the structures of racism, whatever the fuck that means. That's not a character flaw anymore. So let's ask the question, like, what is racism, okay? Well, I think everyone would agree, like, if you're going to do something bigoted towards a black person, that's going to be a racist act, right? Like, that's racism. Okay. You know, you see a black person, you hate him because he's black, and you, like, throw stuff at him. Or you burn the cross on his front lawn, or whatever the fuck it is. That's racism. Okay. Well, what's, like, the next level of racism? Well, it's when you think bigoted thoughts. Okay, you're not really hurting anybody, but you have the wrong mindset. The thought police are going to come after you. You're thinking bigoted thoughts. Okay, it's racism. What about when you vote for a bigot, or you vote for somebody who might implement bigoted policies? Okay, you know, you could probably call it racist too. All right. It's getting a little bit muddier here, but fine. How about if you're part of a group that is considered to have bigoted views? So let's say that you're not a bigot, but you join a political party full of bigots, or you join a club full of bigots, but you're not actually a bigot yourself. Well, you know, why are you using your legitimacy as an agent, as a political agent, to support this group? Okay, well, I mean, now we're getting pretty far removed, but, you know, fair enough. I can see how that could be racism. And then what if racism is when your class of people, your group, is considered the beneficiaries of past bigotry, even though none of you are bigoted today? Well, that doesn't really make you racist, but there's still, you know, an aggrieved party, and you're still benefiting from it, even if you don't know about it. So, like, okay, you know, we're very far removed here, but okay, you could, if you really squint your eyes, see that to be racism. Okay, well, what if, let's say, you go down to the shop and you buy from that business, and the business is owned by a white person, and that white person has probably enjoyed some kind of intergenerational wealth to the point that maybe, like, 5 generations back they had racist parents, and those racist parents benefited in some way from their racism, and now that's been passed on and snowballed so that this white person today can now buy a business, and then you shop there, so now you're complicit in that crime. Like, you can lay out a logically consistent argument as to why everything is a white supremacy, but it is so far-flung, it's so spun out of control, it's so ridiculous, like the depths at which you have to reach to call it a white supremacy. And then turn around and say, well, being racist is a character flaw. It's like, really? So, because I bought from a white-owned business and I didn't know that 5 generations back, his family benefited from racism, and that tiny benefit snowballed over the course of 5 generations to let him build his business, and I'm buying from it, that's a character flaw in me? Like, it becomes ridiculous, the notions these people have about race.
And if we don't start having a conversation about that, and about the ways that we are complicit every day, daily, if we don't talk about it, then we are never going to see movement.
Andrew, do you think...
We've been talking about it for years. For decades, for fuck's sake. Like, where's the movement? You guys, you've won the culture war. We talk about it all the fucking time. We can't talk about it enough for some fucking people. You hold all the reins of power. There are left-leaning people in government. There are left-leaning people in these various cultural institutions. Like, whose fucking fault is it that there's no change? Your average conservative nowadays is sitting at home, getting high and jacking off to trap porn. Like, they're not fucking doing anything. They're not engaged in the political process right now. This is all on you.
We know this country is, for example, a white supremacy. Well, I don't believe that. I think it's possibly the most absurd hyperbole I've ever heard. I'm an immigrant, so I have a slightly different view of this. I can tell you, America,
Look at how angry she is. Look at that face. Look at that face. She's barely tolerating it. I don't think this woman's ever, like, been told no in her life.
America didn't start that way for black people. They didn't immigrate here. They were living somewhere else, and they were kidnapped and raped and murdered and taken here. And so for you to just say this is a magnificent place that doesn't have racism is actually, I think, more of a foundational lie than anything else.
Yeah.
I didn't say that.
Yeah.
I did not say that.
Everyone clap. I clapped. Okay, so what Jon is saying is technically correct, but it also doesn't help the conversation because, like, It's true that these things existed, but like, are there still fucking slaves? Is Jim Crow still in force? Is this not the best time in history? Have we not made things better? For all of the sins of our past, do we not get like a shred, a crumb of anything for having actually done the right thing? Now, I'm not saying that you need to sit here and treat us like white saviors or anything. I'm not saying that, but if you're going to treat all white people like they're slave masters, even when they ended slavery, you're just going to treat them the same way anyway. Why should anyone tolerate that? Why should anyone tolerate being your eternal whipping boy?
You said that it's the most hyperbole.
That racism doesn't exist. I said the term white supremacy is an absurd hyperbole. For most people, that means the KKK. It means no rights for minorities. And
Okay,
this has
then
been
let's
used
define the term.
simply to avoid an argument.
So let's take a step back and let's define what we mean by white supremacy. When you say white supremacy, how are you defining it for this conversation?
When I talk about white supremacy and when I talk about racism, I'm talking about power and privilege, the power and privilege that we hold as white people in society, the way in which our structures, our institutions, our systems, how everything was designed with white people in mind and only white people in mind.
Oh, God. Okay, so listen, if you want me to bust out my old gender studies and critical theory texts, I could explain to you how these people view our society as a white supremacist society. It's going to rely on something like how we had legitimately white privileging policies in the past, a few which I think John actually lays out later in the video.
Redlining
That's a
neighborhoods.
state, that was a state-enforced thing from Jim Crow, which is the one point at which I think absolutely is true.
So you just said it doesn't
beautiful.
exist except for that.
No.
Yeah.
No, I said white supremacy doesn't exist.
But,
'Cause
so
I don't
when the New
think
Deal
because
was passed, right? When the New Deal was passed, black people were explicitly not allowed to have those loans. When the Homestead Act allowed white people to get an enormous wealth of land and be able to farm it, black people did not have access to that.
Social Security.
Slaves were freed, when Social Security came,
GI Bill.
black people, when the GI Bill, black people were not.
And how the snowballing effects of those things continue to contribute to what you might call an unfair disparity today. The issue is that we're talking about 3 different types of racism, okay? There's, like level 1 is like overt racism. That's when you're just a racist, all right? That's when you are saying, black people can't come into my shop. That's when you're a slave owner. That's when you're attacking black people simply for existing in public and being black. Like overt racism, okay? Pretty much everybody in the Western world at this point agrees that's bad, okay? Like that, the fight against overt racism is over. Secondly, there is systemic racism, and there's a lack of understanding regarding everybody when it comes to systemic racism. So, for example, you could have systemic racism where even though the officer implementing the policy is himself not a racist, he's looking at the law, and the law says, well, you have to treat black people differently in some way, and he goes, my hands are tied, dude, I don't want to do this, but I have to. That's systemic racism because it comes from a system. But it's not the only form of systemic racism. It's not the only form. There's another form where, for example, you could look at the trends of various racial groups in a society, and then you could pick out certain behaviors that overwhelmingly only one group actually engages in, and then criminalize those behaviors. The obvious example being used is crack versus powder cocaine, where because more black people use crack cocaine, the punishments associated with it were made significantly higher in the past. I think they still are actually in the States, which is a little bit fucked up. But the point being is that nothing in the law says that you must treat certain races a certain way, but rather they write the laws such that certain behaviors that are committed by certain races are more illegal or say more heavily punished than other behaviors that might also be bad. So that's kind of like a tricky way of getting around it. And the third thing, this is what most people on the left call systemic racism. It's not. This is lingering racism. This is just the after effects of previously abolished racism. So for example, you might have a level playing field in a certain neighborhood between blacks and whites, but because white families have had several more generations of intergenerational wealth to build up as parents die and pass on their wealth to their kids, and then that snowballs forward through time, black people, they had to start that process a little bit later due to historic injustices, and so now they're a little bit behind the game. That's lingering racism. The lingering racism is the fault of nobody today. The issue with lingering racism is that even if there's no perpetrator, it can still be a problem sometimes. But what's going on here is that this woman is conflating all of it into one thing.
But you think it's purposeful?
It's absolutely purposeful.
Andrew, would your argument be that you don't...
Now see, when she says it's purposeful, she's appealing to that idea that it's a character flaw. And yet, that it doesn't make sense when we're talking about systemic racism. It really doesn't make sense when we're talking about lingering racism, that it's purposeful. It's like, what? Is it purposeful on my behalf that a black person down the street has some kind of problem based on something that happened 5 or 6 generations ago? Like, how is that purposeful? The truth is that it's actually not purposeful. That's just a really easy way to bludgeon white people over the head with this shit repeatedly to get them to comply.
This anti-white extremism
Yes.
is losing popular support, is creating a backlash, is going to elect Republicans and undo a lot of the good you think you're doing.
This is what happens when you don't talk about it. This is what happens when white people don't talk about it, is you have racist dog whistle tropes like this that actually perpetuate and perpetuate and perpetuate.
Jesus Christ, lady. I was right. She is not used to ever getting any pushback. Like, look how angry she is. This is literally, I want to speak to your manager right now. Chill the fuck out, Karen. It's okay.
So I did not come on this show to sit here and argue with another white man. That's one of the reasons that we don't even engage with white men at Race to Dinner.
Wait, is she just piecing out? Okay, so here's... This is ridiculous. Here's what I mean. So we have these 3 types of racism: overt, systemic, lingering. All right? What progressives like to do is they will squish them all together such that if you are a beneficiary of some lingering racism, even not knowing that you are, that's the same as throwing on the KKK hood and, you know, lynching black people or something. Like, it's a ridiculous notion. It's a completely, like, brain dead notion. Racism is also a character flaw, which when it's overt racism, it is a character flaw. But this idea that if you are simply moving through life normally, not hurting anybody, not doing anything wrong, you unknowingly, somehow, through some very esoteric chain of events, benefit from some historic past injustice. That's racist, and that's a character flaw against you, which is why these people are constantly apologizing for things that they never even did. It's such self-flagellation. It's ridiculous. And they expect everyone to do this. It's, I think, the most toxic way to talk about race. It's equal to the overt racists. It's just as fucking bad.
If white men were going to do something about racism, you had 400 years. You could have done it. Okay?
Are there still slaves, lady? I know I asked this before. Are there still slaves? Is Jim Crow still in force?
All of us white people do this. I don't care if we say we're abolitionists. I don't care if we say we're progressive. I don't care if we're literally members of the KKK. Every single white person upholds these systems and structures of white supremacy, and we have got to talk about it.
She sounds very much like Anita Sarkeesian there. I like how I paused it on the applause before the applause came in. Everyone soy clap! Everyone soy clap! Now listen, she sounds like Anita Sarkeesian saying, you have to point it all out. If it takes extra time and extra energy out of my day to really try hard to be a progressive as opposed to, say, a normie, and you're just going to call me a member of the KKK anyway, why the fuck would I do it? Why wouldn't I just say, well, fuck you then? I don't care about your moral righteousness. I don't care what you slandering with. I'm going to go do something else with my time.
I think the first thing that we need to understand is that all of us white people have a responsibility to engage in these conversations regularly.
But when it gets hot like this, what do? How do you back out of that?
Hold on, dude. Hold on. This is not a hot conversation. John needs to get in on some internet blood sports or something. So I don't think he knows what a hot conversation is. But it's like I said before, we've been having these conversations for decades, lady. What has your talk done? As you sit here and talk about it and say we got to have conversations and I got to be able to browbeat even more people and I got to be able to call even more people racist, people like you directly vote and support policies that make the situation that you're complaining about a little bit worse. Like, for example, defunding the police. That makes situations in black communities worse. Or at the same time, you're also voting for various city policies that don't allow people to build new low-income housing in your neighborhood. And to be honest, you help with the removal of opportunities for people to independently stand on their own 2 feet through a massive expansion of the welfare state, to the point that it stops being like a good idea and it turns into a situation where people are incentivized to not stand on their own 2 feet, but instead simply live off welfare. And nobody wants to live off welfare. Nobody just wants to accept handouts from the government to be told this is your ration, this is all that you get. People want independence. They want freedom. They don't want a measured proportion of what some authority says that this is what you deserve. I think women like this just want to talk about these things in perpetuity and never do anything. And in fact, do things that make it worse, just so that they can continuously feel good about themselves. And if they happen to work for one of these progressive foundations or institutions, keep on raking in money for giving absolutely nothing to society.
I think figuring out a way to help black kids have a stable family. The truth is,
Yes.
it's true. If you,
Whoa. Hold on. Is she shaking her head here? She's shaking her head here. Hold on. Lady, what are you shaking your fucking head about here? I'm pretty sure that the disintegration of the black family is a pretty big problem. And it might even be part of that lingering racism that I defined earlier. Okay, who the fuck is this person? Hold on.
Overcome. And I'll start with Chip. Equality and Race, Lisa Bond, the resident white woman for Race to Dinner, a group that is trying to have better conversations about race in America.
Race to Dinner. Okay. Eavesdropping on Race to Dinner's anti-racist dinner parties. Let's check out some of these. Here's the Instagram. It's a product and a service. Radically honest. I think I remember these people. Yes. Why liberal white women pay a lot of money to learn over dinner how they're racist. A growing number of women are paying to confront their privilege and racism at dinners that cost $2,500. You white women, I remember I did a video on this or something years ago. White women will pay to have dinner with non-white women who lecture to them about how terrible they are. The whole dinner. I remember this. 2 entrepreneurs have built a business dredging up white women's shame. Oh my god, that's who this fucking person is. Okay. This is what she's from. Okay, I understand. Now I understand where the fuck all this insanity is coming from. I think the worst part here though is Jon Stewart himself. Like he's literally doing to the race conversation and progressive conversations in the United States what he complained about on Crossfire when he walked onto that show back in the 2000s and single-handedly destroyed it. I don't know if you guys remember that controversy. Crossfire was basically a debate show hosted on CNN where you had a left-leaning pundit and a right-leaning pundit debating various news topics. And Jon Stewart showed up, here I found it, October 15th, 2004. He showed up on the program and basically single-handedly destroyed it.
I made a special effort to come on the show today because I have privately amongst my friends and also in occasional newspapers and television shows mentioned this show as being bad. And I felt that wasn't fair and I should come here and tell you that it's not so much that it's bad as it's hurting America. So I wanted to come here today and say... Wait. Here's just what I wanted to tell you guys. Yeah. Stop. Stop hurting America. Okay, now... And come work for us, because we, as the people... How do you pay? The people, not well. Better than CNN, I'm sure. But you can sleep at night. See, the thing is, we need your help. Right now you're helping the politicians and the corporations, and we're left out there to mow our lawns. You just said we're too rough on them when they make mistakes. No, you're not too rough on them. You're part of their strategies. You're partisan, what do you call it, hacks.
I actually remember watching this live when it happened because I'm that old. But a few months later, CNN canceled it because Jon Stewart had basically destroyed the reputation of that program. And now, here he is on his own show doing the same thing that they did, having really terrible, surface-level conversations with the absolute worst individuals to actually have these conversations with, and actively ruining the discourse in the process. Like what this guy up here in the monitor says, he was the guy who was against the rest of them. He was saying some things that were a bit off the wall, but not anything too far from what most normal, politically unengaged Americans think. It's like, hey, I'm not a white supremacist. Like these people without any kind of like academic definitions on their side or anything, they're just thinking, I mean, slavery was bad. I'm not a white supremacist. I don't do any of that shit. I'm just getting on with my life. And yeah, that's the way that a normal person should view it. And they're just like lambasting him like he's some kind of fucking racist. And it's insane. It's terrible. This whole thing's been fucking cancer. Jon Stewart used to actually be able to engage in sometimes decent conversation. I don't know what the fuck happened. I think he basically just fell off like everyone else on the left has recently. They all think that having a real conversation about real issues has to simply be an opportunity for you to show how good you are. And none of that helps anyone.
Not being able to distinguish between real racists and Tea Partiers, or real bigots and Juan Williams or Rick Sanchez is an insult, not only to those people, but to the racists themselves who have put in the exhausting effort it takes to hate.
If I could finger snap, I would finger snap right now. Let's
you'd be
remove it
finger
then
snapping
from
her calling me a racist, John.
You've been doing a pretty good job with it yourself there, so.